How's it going, everyone? I'm LordieModel. I'm having a great day, and I hope you're having a great day too. Well, there's definitely been developments in the 3 formats that I follow up on my Twitch channel and my YouTube when I post the VODs. Modern, Legacy, and Pioneer, for those wondering. And, well, let's start off with Pioneer and kind of go in order. Pioneer, I think it's fair to say, when it comes to the top decks, there's 2 that are getting a little outside representation, and that is going to be Rakdos Vampires and Amalia combo. Together, these are making an overwhelmingly large percentage of the metagame compared to Phoenix trolling behind them in the number 3 spot. And then the rest. Not great times for Pio. Pio's personally not been the most interesting format, even since its inception way back. Now, of course, it did get done dirty because of, timing with things in the pandemic and such. Not really a great time to be kicking off a format, but even with the outsized attention, it's gotten several Pro Tours, which have had some good decks come out of them, some very interesting ones. It just hasn't really done anything that has wowed me, to be entirely honest with you. Again, I do think Amalia combo and Rakdos Vampires are not really helping. Rakdos Vampires, of course, using Sorin to cheat out a gigantic Vein Ripper as early as turn 3, while playing an interactive Rakdos-y game until that point. And sometimes, let's face it, Vein Ripper's good enough to just straight up hardcast when you can be dumping things like Sorin, Evangel, Sorin, Coetus, Sorin, any other vampire. Basically having your 3-drop get you something between 2 and 6 mana out of your hand as a follow-up, and you still have a walker and a creature is pretty good. Now, Amalia combo is, of course, using Amalia and Wild Growth Walker to essentially go infinite to an extent, gaining a bunch of life, making Amalia a 20/20, at which point she wipes the boards, so only you have a gigantic creature left, swing, win. Now, there are ways that they can force Amalia to go over 20 power, thus making an unbreakable loop that forces a draw. Not the greatest gameplay. Now, they have found ways to mitigate this. The Amalia combos are playing Aetherworks Reservoir to give them an alternate kill con, but I don't know that that's going to be enough. The deck is, just because of the nature of it and the fact that it can be pretty miserable to play in paper, has been really something Wizards must be paying attention to for possible ban purposes. And we're going to have to see whether it'll stick around. I would be very surprised if coming up Rakdos Vampires and Amalia combo aren't touched. Be very surprised if we didn't see something with those 2 decks. Now, going on to the format I know the most about, and that being Modern, of course, we have the Elephant or Bird Wizard in the room in Nadu combo. It is outsizedly underrepresented on Moto, despite being one of the largest metagame percentages currently, simply because it is a nightmare to play on that client. The Nadu combo itself requires so many clicks to get through, and it, again, not deterministic, so they can force you to play it out, and you might not have it. And lest we forget, the best combo for Nadu is to use Endurance Loops along with Otawara and Beseiju to destroy all your lands, bounce all your creatures, and win with a big swing of a bunch of tokens. And that, while you can demonstrate this loop in paper, not really something you can do on Moto, so they're left with the much less desirable Thoracle kill. Which, not for nothing, but the deck is still putting up result in challenge after challenge after challenge on a client that is inherently hostile to how it's trying to go off. So, yeah, that is a bit of a problem. Outside that problem, we do have the other one ring in the room, the One Ring, a card that has been problematic since its entry into the format. being one of the top cards, booing not only the likes of Nadu, but Mono Black Midrange, aka Mono Black Necro, all of the Tron variants, Jeskai Control, Titan, because why not? A lot of things being held up by that card. Now, we are getting some hate in Bloomborough for it. Wizards does finally seem to be open to printing more ways to get around protection. Though sentiment on Twitter and other platforms, people are kind of sick of the One Ring. And it reminds me a lot of the rumblings before the Violent Outburst banning. Will One Ring meet a similar fate? Possible. It does feel like all but a certainty Nadu is gone come the BNR in August. Deck is miserable. Deck is everywhere. Deck is outsidedly represented in paper. And if your opponent forces you to demonstrate the entirety of the loop, it is a very long process and is going to cause problems for TOs when it comes to these big multi-day tournaments, because you can't have every round going to time because of all the Nadu players. So we're going to, again, I would even say Nadu very likely to be gone. Not 100% set in stone though. And I'm also looking at One Ring. While we're on that subject, we can't forget the other problematic card in Grief. The Pitch Elemental, one would argue the one that Fury died for its sins, but enough on that. Again, just being able to cheat out, have a threat turn 1 and thought seize your opponent twice, all for an Undying spell and a card to pitch to Grief and the Grief itself. You know, there's a lot of different strategies. Goryo's Vengeance is running a small Grief package, of course. Mono Black Midrange, even some Coffers variants are running Grief. Scam, even though it's not really where it was. Scam, all the various MH3 cards kind of saw the end of Scam. But Grief's still one of those cards, again, and it could just be the fact people are sick of it, but feeling a lot like that Violent Outburst. Not to the extent of the One Ring, but it does feel like it's on the radar of people. And lest we forget, fun is a factor, you know, like if something is very ubiquitous and very miserable, that's something the Wizard looks into, just like how KCI, because it was a nightmare for play, it was a non-deterministic combo and just kind of miserable. That's why it eventually wound up on the chopping block. Will Grief meet the same fate? Possible. You know, Nadu, I'd say very likely. One Ring and Grief, they're very much in that conversation. And keeping with Grief, let's get over to Legacy, where I will say, kind of looking at it, Scam has been on a little bit of a downtick recently. Could it just be that things like the new, the great, the mighty Psychic Frog entering all of Magic with just its hyper-efficient Psychotog but better gameplay? Is that really enough to unseat Scam? There's definitely been a downtick in it, but is it one of those people are just wanting to try out new things, and because of that, folks just aren't playing it, they're just not registering it? Could it also be that Grief is so miserable, folks are kind of over it and also not registering it? That is possible. There's still an outsized representation of Grief Scam, or I should say Rescamimator, because that is also the thing that we get in Legacy. In Modern, you know, all you could do is maybe cheat out, like you just cheat out of Grief. Maybe you stand back a monkey, something like that. But in Legacy, you can also, you have reanimate spells, you have surveil lands. Sometimes you just put an Atroxa in yard, get her back. Put a Archon of Cruelty in the yard, get it back. Put a Grizzlebrand in yard, get him back. Like just these great runner hits. And you also have the certainty of putting a Troll of Khazad-dûm in the yard and just getting a 5/6 or a 6/5 Super Menace onto the battlefield. Really, really rough times out there in Legacy. The power, the explosiveness of a Reanimator strategy paired with just a Dimir tempo good stuff. So we're kind of at a point where I would be surprised if one, if not all three of these formats saw some love from Wizards come the BNR. Again, that being said, we are not sure what they'll do. They seem to have been fine letting these things ride for a while. But then again, like, I know Modern, the outcry, like, people are not satisfied with the current status quo. People are over the One Ring. They're definitely over Nadu. My god, that card's not been legal but a full month now, and people are already sick to death of it, myself included. So we do have a lot of these things going on, and we're being pulled in this direction. I would imagine Wizard is going to take some kind of action. Now, as to what that action will be, hard to say. I really do see Nadu going in Modern. I would be surprised if Amalia and maybe even Soren went in Pioneer, and Grief very likely to go in Legacy at some point. I mean, we even had a tournament. I'll put it up here. I can't remember the name of it. But they called off a big Legacy tournament just because Wizards didn't ban Grief, and Grief is so, I mean, living up to his name, pretty miserable. By that same notion, I could see it going in Modern, and unless we forget, people are really, really over the One Ring. People are wondering, why isn't this restricted? Why is it here? Again, I'm going to go ahead and go off on a bit of a tangent. I do not like a restricted list in Modern. As fun as Vintage is, it does kind of just devolve into who gets the most of the restricted cards first. That person usually wins. I don't think we want that in any other format. You know, like, there's a reason, like, this Vintage is the only place where you can play Power 9. So it is a little bit, you know, whatever, you're going to have that, because this is the only place where you can play those cards. I don't think we need that in other formats. I don't think that's what we want them to be about. So, kind of a little tangent there. But, again, quick summation here. Pioneer, Modern, and Legacy all got some problems. And I would be surprised if Wizards didn't work on these problems come August. Wouldn't be buying into Amalia's, Soren's, One Rings, Griefs, definitely not Nadu's, until we see what happens. But that's just my opinion on the subject. Please, feel free to tell me your opinion down in the comments below. Tell me what you think. Do you think those cards are fine? Do you think they need to go? Should Wizards look at maybe banning some other cards, or even more cards? Please feel free to let me know. If you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to give it a like. And also, if you want to catch further things from me, like my edited VODs, or more videos like this one, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'll also throw a link to my Twitch and Twitter down below as well. But thank you all so very much for being here. Have a great one, and I'll catch you later.